I get a lot of event invitations and even some events to, to moderate something like this. I can't think of one that I would feel more grateful to be in the room for. And I know a lot of people, say about Standing Together, say about the two of you, say about your work, that it is what gives them hope. And I'll ask you a little more about that, but I'll just say for me, what you do for me is push me to have the courage to do things I know are right, but seem hard to do in very dark times. With the example of the leadership you provide. And I say that as someone who, honestly, for a lot of my years in elected office, just kept my mouth zipped tight about Israel and Palestine. Before I ran for office, it was something I spoke about and cared about. But once you get in there, the incentives have been just not to be that brave. Maybe you could just talk about taking out the garbage or improving job quality or fighting for affordable housing. And it really, in so many ways, is the example of Standing Together that led me to start speaking out against the occupation when very few elected officials would do it, to start being open to organizing together with people fighting for Palestinian freedom without just chattering my teeth about it all the time. In the days after October 7th, it was in many ways as a result of what Standing Together does in Israel that Friends of Standing Together and the incredible group Israelis for Peace started organizing, giving us a place where we could go to demand a ceasefire, to cry out with agony for hostage families, to shout busha, to shout shame about starvation of people in Gaza, in a place that we knew other people would also be looking to fight together, not in some kumbaya way for peace, but with a demand for justice and humanity. And then I will just say, I don't think without your example, it was in many ways your example that gave me the courage and the clarity when the time came that the right thing for me to do was to cross-endorse Zoran Mamdani. And I don't say that, I don't say it lightly. I mean, we don't have politics in this country that give you a vessel for that kind of work together. We are taught to stay separate, to be careful that there will be too many people angered by it, and that it'll cost you more support without building something. And, so on the one hand, I knew for sure I didn't want Andrew Cuomo to be mayor. That was easy. But what I don't think, what you guys showed is if you find the courage to build something more like solidarity, is possible, and that people will be extraordinarily moved by it. And look at all the people in this room tonight moved by your leadership. So I just feel so grateful. So I guess I'd like to ask you, who is seeing Sally and Alonli for the first time? All right, so that looks like more than half the room. So even though I think a lot of people know who you are, know what you've done, know who you've built, even more don't. They're just meeting you for the first time. So if you could just start by telling them your story a little bit, where you come from, how you got into this work, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you so much. What an inspired room, and what, we come here from so much grief, holding so much pain. We really are coming from a place, we have been bleeding for so long, and to come here and to be held and to be loved and to be inspiring and inspired, and to have partners, and to really also connect and understand that we are in this together. We are one movement. We are one movement that is working together to fight injustices, to fight inequality, to fight authoritarianism, to fight a lot of the things that we're facing together here in the US, back home in Israel-Palestine. But also, we also know that a lot of what happened to our people back home, also affected you. It was not only wars against our humanity, it was wars against your humanity and all of our humanity. So it feels really good to be held tonight. So thank you for coming, first of all, and thank you for doing this for us. I do want to talk a little bit about myself, but I do want to acknowledge a moment where we are a month from the so-called ceasefire. And this is by no means a ceasefire. We are still witnessing bombardments. We are still witnessing innocent people being killed, children being bombarded in tents. We are still seeing people being starved and sick without any infrastructure, looking at a very, very uncertain future with over 50% of the Gaza Strip controlled by the IDF. We are seeing an unprecedented historic level of settler violence in the West Bank. The West Bank is on fire. The West Bank is screaming. We are seeing a double down on discrimination and persecution and very, very dangerous legislations that are happening within Israel with a fascist, Kahanist, settler government that is just taking us to the abyss. And we need to acknowledge this. And we come here to acknowledge the joy that we felt a month ago with seeing the hostage families being reunited and seeing the kids in Gaza celebrating amongst the rebels the fact that they probably will not be bombed when they go to bed. And I think one of the hardest things for us as a movement is to not only acknowledge the pain and the fears of what is now the other, but also acknowledge the joy. A little bit about myself. I'm Sally Abid, I'm 34. I grew up in Ma'lia in the Western Galilee, a Palestinian town, very small town. And I don't want to say too much about, my whole political, origin story, but I want to say that I had the privilege to be active within actually American campuses in 2011. And what was in 2011? The Occupy Wall Street movement. And I remember coming here and having for the first time really, having the space, the safe space to be Palestinian. I didn't have that space growing up. But also, having environmental justice issues. We were the first college to divest from polluting industries, to meet, Black Americans and LGBTQ, and understand that, what really is the things that make us a movement, make us, fight, build a new alternative to the institutions and to the leaderships and the politics that is actually oppressing us. And when I went back home, I didn't have that space. I think in many ways, as a Palestinian, I had zero space, and I'm talking 10 years ago. And we are talking right now about almost, forever shrinking spaces for Palestinians, citizens of Israel, to really engage in civil movements, in political movements, and let alone not only, have politics, but to exist as Palestinians, to ache as Palestinians, to grieve as Palestinians. And the reason why I'm in Standing Together is because I know that our political project and our co-leadership, the new political protagonist that we are building, that we are imagining, that we are leading within Standing Together, is one that is revolutionary, that gives me the most radical position to change my society and to liberate my people. The reason I'm saying this is because we are imagining a new kind of way we look at Israeli society and at Israel-Palestine, one where I am not only fighting for my people as Palestinians, but I'm also fighting and claiming part and claiming the lead within Israeli society. Understanding that justice and peace and liberation cannot be disconnected from housing and from livable wage and from environmental justice and from the real issues of the society that I'm part of. And I think having that kind of empowerment within Standing Together and taking charge over not only my society and lecturing the Israeli society, the Jewish society, but actually leading them out of self-collective interest as a new majority in Israel-Palestine around peace and justice and freedom for all is one of the most radical things that I can do.
Thank you, Salim. Thank you, Brad. I think coming here tonight and seeing this amazing welcome and love and feeling that people here want to hear what we have to say, or you ask about our personal story, it's making me quite sad, actually. It's making me sad because it does reflect a quite opposite image of what happens back home and how it looks for us back home. It does make me think of how the past 2 years have been full of violence on the land, on the activity, on the streets, how it's been tough to try and get out the message, to say what we have to say, to call to stop the war, to call against the genocidal calls of our government, to call to save the children, to call to release the hostages. And then we come here and we feel maybe there is some space for messaging. Maybe the spaces do not need to only shrink as they do around us. Maybe they can exist. So it's amazing on one hand, but it's quite tough to think about the reality back home on the other hand. I was born in Tel Aviv. I'm 37 years old. I was born to a single-parent family. It was my mom and my twin brother and our grandmother. And I think that some of my very first political memories were around growing up to a mother that was struggling financially in the very expensive city of Tel Aviv. I remember that at some point we had the first time that our school decided to send us to a yearly trip of 2 days, getting to sleep one night away from home in the southern city of Eilat. But then the day before, the teacher called out my name in front of the entire class, telling me that if my mom will not bring the payment to the trip, I will not get on the bus the next morning. And I remember how I felt ashamed, how I felt that I have no control over the situation, embarrassed. I remember everyone was actually looking at me, but I was like looking at the eyes of my teachers, trying to really stay focused there. And this has been kind of the experiences around my growing up, also understanding that I'm gay in the closet. I felt a lot of injustice around me, how the reality can be tough and unfair. And I think it wasn't until my last year of high school, when I started already working a full time next to going to school. I was waiting tables. I was working in a big chain of coffee shops in Tel Aviv. And you know that when you do work in the dining industry, the laws are basically just a recommendation. Employers there do not really want to pay you money. They are trying to get workers for free because you can get the tips, and that will be instead of getting a salary in Israel. It's legal. And I remember coming to my boss. It was really one of the last months of high school. I was coming to him, telling him, I know that I need to get paid for extra hours. I know that I need to get paid for Shabbat hours. I know that I need to get paid for buses and rides. And I look at the pay slips, and you just don't. And he told me, you can choose to go and work in a different cafe. It's Tel Aviv. There are so many other places. Just go and work there. This is how we do things here. But I didn't. I didn't go and work in a different place. I unionized the workers instead. Thank you. In what became the first dining industry union in Israel's history, I got fired. I was brought back to work with a court's order. We led a 6-week strike, resulted in the actually CEO getting fired by the owners, and we signed sweet revenge, sweet revenge. And we signed a collective agreement granting us all the rights that we deserved, nothing more. Just something that we deserve. And I think this was the very first moment in which I felt maybe I do have some control over the reality around me, around injustices that I feel, that are just not fair. But there were 2 lessons that I really took from this long struggle. It was a 1.5 years that I was involved in that. One was that it's not about me only feeling this injustice. Something spoke very, very strongly to me that it was me and other people that are in the same situation. I didn't have the developer awareness that I have today, but it was very, very powerful to me that we did it together because it's the shared collective interest of all of us. The second thing was that one of the union members, one of the 5 people that got to lead 300 workers in the chain, was a Palestinian citizen of Israel. His name was Nazir. And he got to be a leader of mainly Jewish people, mainly Jewish workers. In 6-week strikes, he led Jewish people. And something clicked very strongly that maybe we can break the barriers around the self-interest. Maybe there could be a different kind of majority that is not either Jews or Palestinians, but something that can really create a home and a base of activity for all of us. And from then on, everything that I did in my activity, in my political life, was always Palestinian and Jewish together.
I think, organizing in the last 2 years, but really, in the last 8 years that I've been with the movement, as a Palestinian in Israel, and as I said before, trying to understand how do I, because if I really want to convince and to organize and to mobilize Jewish Israelis, I need to be one of them. I cannot lecture them from the outside. I cannot, protest from the outside. I cannot demand liberation or solidarity. The most effective way for me to really have an impact and really, exercise my historic role as a Palestinian in Israel is to be part. And what does that really mean, to be part of Israeli society, when we have to acknowledge that at the moment the Israeli society is, exuding and exhibiting historic levels of deep dehumanization towards Palestinians, very, very high concerning levels of racism, of hate, of condoning the calls for starvation, for carpet bombardment. When there were our government officials and ministers really called and invited the genocide that we witnessed, people in Israel normalized it. And we need to understand that we are working with our society that is in that state at the moment. And we have well, we have two options. One option is to really, for me as a Palestinian, it's very easy for me to just, isolate myself. It's very easy because they're already isolating me. My identity and my pain and my grief and my responsibility over my collective, my Palestinian collective, is already provocative, illegitimate, and that's at best provocative and illegitimate, and at worst, criminal. And the reason why I'm presenting this impossible, this impossible picture of how do you talk to the Israeli public? And you need to remind yourself that if you are really serious about changing the society that you're part of, that you claim you want to change, you have to understand the society that you're trying to change. Does that mean we can excuse the Israeli public and their stances on the genocide and on the apartheid and on the settler violence and on what's happening inside of Israel? Does this excuse for us as organizers, as movements, for us to understand the fears, the trauma that happened from the massacre on October 7th, to understand the perceived existential threat and, the real threats that Israelis are experiencing? It doesn't excuse it. But it's definitely is necessary to understand how do you provide them with an alternative. The Israeli society today, the Jewish public within the Israeli society, is looking at the world right now. They're looking outside, and they are being told that they are, genocide supporters, that they're oppressors, that they are killers, war criminals, and that they are dark, irredeemable collective, and they are being shunned. They are feeling extremely isolated. And then they turn around in fear and in horror, and they look at the leadership. Who's in the leadership today? Look across the spectrum from the very, very, fascist extreme right, settler, Kahanist, to the very mild center. Let's call them center. Let's be generous. And that's the spectrum. And it's the same main dominant idea of we have to control, we have to military control, we have to incarcerate, we have to double down. It's the main voices right now are calling to go back, to resettle Gaza again, to break the ceasefire, to ethnically cleanse, to settle, and to do the same in the West Bank, full-on apartheid. That's the main idea that is coming in. And the more moderate idea is saying, you know what? Let's do an investigative committee. Let's see, what went wrong. This is purely a failure of the intelligence. It has nothing to do with the siege of decades. It has nothing to do with the violent military control of millions of people. And yes, I agree, there should be an investigation to understand what happened. Yeah, on October 7th. But this is not the issue. And that's the most extreme thing they are getting on the other side from the liberal camp. Let's go back to October 6th and just do better. And we need to understand that and understand how do we provide the Israeli public with a radical idea of peace. And peace is radical. And I think it lost its radical impact, but peace is radical. Peace that is just, that is equal, that is, guaranteeing freedom and independence for everyone, for the 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians from the river to the sea, that is radical. And we need to present it to the Israeli society, not out only of a moral stance, but out of self-interest for the Israeli people. And you ask me how we do that. For me, as a Palestinian, I think that's one of the hardest parts of my role. Because my pain is not recognized. My pain, I go around, I experienced motherhood, you know, literally like crying every time my baby had a fever, and I had ibuprofen for her, and I had hot water for her, and clean diapers. Just the immense isolation as a Palestinian mother in Israel, and just a human in Israel. It really felt very isolating. And it's radical empathy towards liberation. That's what needs to happen. And that's something that is only possible because I'm part of a collective that can allow me, that can empower me, that can hold me to do that. Yeah.
I watched you, you know, on Instagram and on social media, you know, say things like that a few times, and I just want to say, like, you know, I'm over here. My daughter is, you know, 22, and she's safe, and still watching those pictures. Like, I had a hard time, and imagining you, like, with that Palestinian baby in Haifa, finding a way to be honest about how wrecked it felt. As part of this movement to build something it's extraordinary. So for your courage to come share it with us and to keep doing this, you know, both as a new mom and as somebody fighting for freedom is, I don't take it lightly. Thank you. Let me ask about the relationship between the organizing work you do in Standing Together and politics, electoral politics. I know, Sally, you're now an elected official in Haifa. Amazing, congratulations. Yes, no, I mean, there's something wrong with us, so that's a different question. But I know the work is not mostly electoral organizing. You're building a grassroots movement. Is there any movement, any space for pushing something different in electoral politics that you see?
That's a great question, because reality, yet again, in this field is not great. It is Israel we're talking about. And I would say that, you know, first of all, to kind of understand the movement itself and the mechanics of what we do, Standing Together is a Jewish-Palestinian grassroots movement organizing citizens of Israel around issues of peace and equality and social justice, resisting the occupation, fighting for many different of equalities in Israel. And we do that by organizing people, building communities, building leadership, spreading around the country, building the organizational capacity to become powerful and stronger, and mobilizing the public around campaigns and struggles and harvesting the power of the organization, the movement, into sometimes moving tens or hundreds of thousands of people into struggles and rallies and campaigns. Today we have 7,000 registered members in the movement, Palestinians and Jews, and around these members there are a lot of people that are members in political parties. And this is something that allows us to push and challenge political parties in Israel. But now, let's say something about the Israeli political system. I think it needs to be imagined as one spectrum that has only one color. It has many shades of the same color, but still only one color that is very dominant. It is very shining in a very terrible light, but it's shining and strong. And the shine, that strong light, is positioned in the very far right side of the Israeli spectrum of politics. And this is the idea that says, if you want to be safe, as Sally said, you need to control them. That says that your life as a Jewish person is worth more than a life of a Palestinian. A life of a Palestinian does not worth at all in our land. It's an idea that says that in order to survive, in order to keep living on our land, it must be either us or them, and there's no room or space on the land for them, for the Palestinians. So it's maybe easy to ethnically cleanse or to demand to remove all the Palestinians in crazy plans like the Trump Riviera plan of Gaza. And this is the strong idea. And then When you look to the other side of the political spectrum, you don't see a strong, shining, competing idea that says the complete opposite of this idea, that if you want to survive, you need to have peace, because peace is the only way for security. You don't see that. You don't hear that. You don't hear people in the political system telling you that equality is a value that keeps people prospering and safe and makes everyone feeling at home in their homeland. You don't hear people saying that, you know, we are here to combat the other idea. You hear apologetic shades of the strong idea on the other right. And if you will ask yourself, when was the last time an Israeli politician on the center or the left spoke about Israeli-Palestinian peace? Unfortunately, it will be very many years ago. So we imagined our role in standing together, our mission, the responsibility we take upon ourselves to make Israeli-Palestinian peace, to make the end of the occupation, the end of the apartheid system in the West Bank, to make this an option, to make people hear it and see it and understand that it exists in the spectrum. We have a lot of different methods to do that. We challenge the political parties. We try to organize bases of the political parties to challenge them from within. But mainly, we try to make this possibility, this option exist. And I think that you need to imagine it as you know, entering a restaurant. And when you enter a restaurant and you get a menu, you look at the menu, and eventually most people will choose an option from the menu. Peace is not on the menu for Israeli people. And standing together takes it upon themselves, upon ourselves, to put peace in the menu, to put the end of the occupation in the menu. And I think that, you know, saying that right now it doesn't exist in the political system, it creates two things that we want to do and see in the political system. One is to challenge and to put it as the option and make people, you know, understand that maybe instead of taking a paler shade of the strong color of the right wing, maybe they can take a paler shade of us. Because we put a political weight on the other side, a strong political idea on the competitive side. So this is one thing, to challenge the existing political system. But I will say here, without, you know, feeling that I need to apologize about it, Israel needs a peace and equality political party. It needs it. It needs to exist in the parliament. And this party needs to be Jewish and Palestinian. It is unfathomable. It is unfathomable. The Jewish people in Israel need to vote in one ballot and Palestinians need to vote in a different ballot. It's not reasonable. It does not make any sense. And I will commit. I will be happy to do that, to commit to build a political party in Israel that is of both Palestinians and Jews and of peace and equality. But it will not be. It will not be from within standing together. Standing together is a grassroots movement. It will stay a grassroots movement. There needs to be a movement that can organize and mobilize people in masses, because politics doesn't start in parliament. Politics never started in parliament. Women did not get the right to vote because a man that was only, you know, existing in parliament, only men, woke up one day and said, today is the day I want to grant women the right to vote. No, women fought to get the right to vote. They organized, they mobilized, and they forced this change from outside of the political system, and this is what Standing Together will do. But we want to see a completing move from inside the parliament, and I think it's something we really, really need to see.
All right. Sally tells me that... Sally tells me that was Alonli just making some news. that was... No, I guess not. That's all right. I also got pushed to make some news tonight, but I'm not doing it either, so just so you know.
I want to add one thing,
yeah,
just because we are in New York and, you know, we're talking about Mamdani's election. Grassroots movements, you know, on the local level is one of the most powerful things we can do at this moment. You know, Tamara mentioned a little bit, but post-October 7th, a Palestinian woman led a joint slate in a mixed city, the third biggest city in Israel, and actually got elected. Okay, that's me. I'm actually the first Palestinian woman to ever lead a joint slate in Israel. Or a political party. And the reason why I'm saying this, not because, you know, it's modeling, you know, some kind of representation. it's modeling so much more than that. Grassroots is about people's power. It's about people's politics. And yes, as a Palestinian, in the midst of my people's annihilation and killing, I was also very, very proud to fight about transportation, about sewage, and about public education. And I think it was one of the most important things I could do, to talk to people in Haifa, to marginalized people, to Russian immigrants, and to ultra-Orthodox Jews, and to young people in the Hadar and in the Carmel, to areas in Haifa, and Hadar is actually very mixed, and to really try to imagine the new alternative. The alternative model that we want to see of people's politics, of grassroots, of democratic movements. And I think to be able to build that alternative when everything just feels so bleak it shines so much light into our work and into our political imagination of what actually can be done. Because we're not only fighting, not being killed and to be alive, we are actually fighting towards prosperity and towards real, beautiful life that we can enjoy on our land. And that starts with local politics.
To follow up on that, I want to ask you to say a little more for people about Palestinian civil society and some other examples of leadership and organizing, because I'm guessing, like me, a lot of people in this room see parts of Israeli and Israeli Jewish civil society. We despise Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu. We see them. We know the little bits of the Israeli left, and we pray for them. And we have a lot of relationships. It's very hard to see that in Palestinian civil society, and we've watched, all of this death and bombing, but it's hard to see people as agents when they are being bombed and killed and starved. And then you resort to thinking about Hamas, or you see the Palestinian Authority, and it's very hard to know that much, to get information and see some examples of where are the hopes, the cracks, the fissures, the opportunities. So can you tell us, I know it's not an easy picture. I don't mean to be overly rosy with us, but help us have a little more view into some of the spaces in Palestinian civil society where people are trying in different ways to organize and build from this horror towards something better.
Actually, 2 days ago, I met with some Palestinians, one of them a student in Bir Zayt. One of them was actually a father from Gaza who lost his wife, his 2 children, his mom, his aunt, and he's here with 2 of his remaining children. And first of all, I was, it was my first time meeting a survivor, first, face to face, and it was just very, very powerful to understand and experience his generosity of wanting to learn about my work in Israeli society. It was just unfathomable to me, his ability to do that. But I talked to him a little bit about that, about civil society, about what is actually happening. And it exists. It existed prior to October 7th. We saw also, the border protests that were in 2018. The right of return protests. I don't know if any of you remember it. Many Palestinians in Gaza actually were shot dead on the borders when that happened. And there was a lot of resistance and resistant movements against Hamas, despite very, very brutal and dangerous, fatal conditions of doing that. And then people come and ask us now, do you have a counterpart in Gaza? And I'm like, there's no infrastructure for human basic needs. And yet, I have one story about that. We organized a big campaign around, in Palestinian towns in Israel to collect aid to Gaza. It was one of our ways to really mobilize a deeply, deeply paralyzed society within Israel, Palestinian society that, endured a lot of persecution and arrests, and we really were paralyzed utterly. And we understood that we need to bring, the activism to them, to their backyards, to their schools. And we were like, okay, we're going to go and create some mobilization. We're going to collect maybe 4 or 5 trucks of aid, bring them to Gaza, and have a message that Palestinians in Israel still have a say and still stand in solidarity and are still political about their people, even though they're silenced. We collected 400 trucks. 400 trucks of aid. And with a lot of fighting against the IDF that made it very difficult for us to enter it. We did enter 250 of those trucks into Gaza. The remaining, we actually brought it to the West Bank. And my point, it's a good story, so I had to tell it. My point is that when we sent those trucks in, we received videos the next couple of days of hundreds of people in Gaza wearing purple vests, purple, our color, in solidarity, and I guess, just wanting to be thankful for us, and just hundreds of people, celebrating and talking to Palestinians in Israel and talking to standing together and, just really trying to organize in the most human way, in the most impossible reality around highlighting our messaging that we brought in. And I think that I remember that, and I just fell apart to understand the amount of resilience and the amount of just unlimited humanity and insistence on life and going forward, in Gaza. And I do believe that it is, despite the impossibility, it will come back. I believe in that. It's the same in the West Bank. The West Bank and Bir Zit is it's very difficult. I mean, you also have the IDF, going into the Israeli military going into the campus every once in a while and just arresting a bunch of students. That's something that happens. And then you have the PA, which, is not the most democratic and is definitely cracking down on any kind of resistance. We are in a crisis. We are in a political leadership crisis within the Palestinian community, and it is engineered. It is intentional. And any legitimate leader that we have that might be able to build any kind of grassroots, any kind of war is either incarcerated, assassinated, or, exiled. And it is engineered. And we need to recognize that before expecting anything from Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. But it's definitely something that I believe is absolutely possible once we recognize that and we do allow the right conditions for it to happen from the grassroots. Don't bring us your own solutions.
Hi, everyone. So we got many, many amazing questions, and there are a lot of questions around the future of standing together as a movement. Like, how do you see the future of standing together? Do you see standing together become mainstream? Do you see standing together entering electoral politics? This amazing grassroots organizing, what is the next phase for it?
So I will say that right now we are very much focused on the crisis in the West Bank and the crisis in Gaza. In the last month before coming here and still our friends back home, every day we mobilize our members to the West Bank to help in the olive harvest season. We are seeing unprecedented levels of violence, actually historic level of extreme settlers' violence, people that come down from the settlements to Palestinian villages with sticks and stones and rifles. They come and they try to prevent Palestinians from approaching or reaching their land, their olives. And it's something that we also hear the leaders of the settler movement and parliament members in the Israeli parliament saying, if we are not allowed to continue the daily killing in Gaza, the revenge will come in the West Bank. That's what they say. And this is how they act. So every day we take buses from Israeli cities to the West Bank as part of one of our major project, the Solidarity Guard. It started actually a year ago when settlers tried to attack the ATRACs, and they succeeded. I show you also the videos of setting them in fire, looting them, spilling flour or rice to the ground. Standing together, organize 1,000 Israelis from our members to come and protect the ATRACs, the Palestinian truck drivers, and to stand between the settlers and these ATRACs, and just try to allow them to pass. It's a long story. It took weeks until we managed to make the police interfere, and eventually, when we came there in the morning, we were not allowed to go on the road. The settlers were not allowed to go on the road, and the police made way to the trucks to continue. And now we are focusing in trying to create this work in the West Bank, and I'm sure if you ask us what will happen in the next few years, we will be there on the ground in the West Bank, in the Israeli society with the Palestinian community, 2 million people that are extremely attacked. In East Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, it's a Palestinian part of Jerusalem. And it's just sad to see how people are allowed to riot, to inflict pain and violence, and to walk free. And you know what? It is also something dangerous, not only to the Palestinians. Yesterday, 100 settlers participated in a violent attack next to Tulkarem in the West Bank. 4 people were arrested and then released. And when people are walking freely among us, in our streets, in our society, knowing that they committed a violent crime, but nothing will happen to them, it's not only dangerous to the Palestinians. There's a self-interest to the Israelis there to resist this. So this is something Standing Together will continue doing. Another thing is that we're going to build a youth movement, a Jewish Palestinian youth movement. I think that we do understand that there's no answer to young people in Israel. A young person is born in our society, and if you're below 30, all you know is Netanyahu. All you know is Ben Gvir. All you know is the refusal of Israel to say the word occupation, to address or to acknowledge the reality of people living around us that are not Jews. And I think that a lot of the young people are being pushed deliberately into places of, celebrating losing our humanity. It is something you can see TikTok videos of celebrating people that are dying in Gaza. You can see how the racism is trickling down from the government to the youth of Israel. So we want to bring Jewish and Palestinian youth all across Israel and to try and do it not in a lovey-dovey, kumbaya kind of way.
Not to bridge the narrative.
Yeah, not to bridge the narrative, but around a shared struggle for a shared future, to end occupation, to address the tough things, to name the tough things, and from there to start building already from a young age. And the question about politics, I believe I answered. Standing Together will not become a political party, but Standing Together is not just a movement. Standing Together is part of an ecosystem, of a universe, of a political idea of peace and equality and social justice. So the movement will exist, and I hope we will see other parts of this ecosystem being born in the next few years. And
this is an excellent segue because we actually have lots of questions from college students, including a shout out to whoever's from Sarah Lawrence, my alma mater, which are basically about organizing here. Tips you have for organizing, how do you talk to people who really don't agree with you, how do you persist? They see Jews becoming much more religious and conservative, especially college students post-October 7th. They see movements for the liberation of Palestine, also using pretty extreme language. So how do you, both here and on the ground, what are your tips to get through to, work with, or expand the circle?
Thank you, Tamara. A little anecdote, we organize on campuses in Israel. We have 14 chapters across campuses and university campuses and college campuses, and we run 4 student unions. We're actually the largest organized movement within student unions and campuses in Israel. And just one thing about any students organized in colleges, you know, in the last 2 years, we see you. Good job. Really amazing. We know that you have gone through a lot, and we thank you. We thank you for everything that you have done. We know that it was, you know, extremely difficult to navigate the discussions and the conversations and the fights and fighting the university, but fighting, you know, the student bodies and the faculty and everyone outside. So just a word of, you know, thank you, and we see you. We really see you.
Do you want 2 more? Or are we good?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Yes. I want to hear what you have to say.
Ask
And I guess maybe Alonli has something to say about how we actually, you know, build politics that tries to understand the basic question is how do you change reality and not just condemn it, not just, you know, say how ugly it is, because it's not only easy, it's sometimes such an urge, it's so urgent to just shout out how ugly the reality is. And I think we need to understand how do we want to change it. And the basic question is of changing, you know, change interest-based politics, you know, is who do we want to convince? And we probably want to convince more people that are not convinced. And that means that we have to let go of a lot of like the gatekeeping. And I think there has been a lot of gatekeeping in campuses, especially in US campuses. So I think that's one of the things that I would do at the beginning. And Alonli actually has a very
I'm interesting what you have to say, brother. Well, just quickly say that I think it needs to be said about the campus movement, but actually the wider movement here, that our lives are not part of a football match. We are not teams that you need to pick a side of either the Palestinians or the Israelis. And I think it's important to say that, because when you believe that you are, you know, out and you must pick a team, and then it means that if you stand with the Palestinians, you necessarily stand against all Israelis, or if you stand with Israelis, you necessarily stand against all Palestinians. What you do is you lose your humanity and you dehumanize the other team. And the reality is that if all Palestinians will lose, all Israelis will lose. And if all Israelis will lose, all Palestinians will lose. Our lives on the land are intertwined. We cannot separate our lives. And the political project we need to push is not of, you know, canceling the other side, but actually making, you know, a progress, making a pathway to a solution in which we are all free, all safe, all equal on the land, an Israeli-Palestinian peace. And I think this part of the movement was lost. It was lost. People could not see that we're not just fighting to condemn the other side or to cancel the other side, but we are fighting for a solution. And the only possible solution is a political solution, a diplomatic solution that sees everyone. And it is not to say all lives matter. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, there's occupation. Yes, there's apartheid. Yes, there was a genocide. Yes. But next to it, we all deserve safety. We all deserve to be human. We all deserve to be seen. And if your politics is a politics of canceling the humanity of the other, you're part of the problem.
Mostly I was just going to try to ask you to say that. But I'll underline it a little, because this is what's been heartbreaking here and why what you represent is so powerful. It has just felt like the vast majority of spaces to go say anything choose that some lives are more valuable than others, and that so much of the movement, for Palestinian freedom and liberation has been conducted in a way which is not only anti-Zionist, for which there's room in our politics, but in a way that draws a line there and says, there is one kind of flag that's welcome at this demonstration. But I'll own on the other side as well, much of what has passed for, two-state solution advocacy dresses itself up as though Palestinian lives are equal, but doesn't act as though Palestinian lives are equal. It's like, if all your statements put Israeli before Palestinian, you always talk about the hostages before the famine, and we treat this idea of peace or coexistence as though it is, just kind of both sidesing or nice or easy, and yet what it's become is necessary to have the courage to insist fundamentally, to shout out against apartheid and occupation and genocide, of course, but in the name of shared humanity that we could love, that we could relate to, that we could feel, and that has become very difficult to do anywhere, especially very difficult to do on campus. So anybody who's trying to do that work as students on campus, we shout you out for sure. And I don't know if they're open to starting standing together chapters on American campuses, but I bet there's some people in the room that would like it.
Give us a few years. But there are a lot of questions about America. So the involvement, obviously, of the American government, on one hand, is a recurring question. And, what do we need to do differently? I think it's pretty obvious to the people in the room, but I'll let you say it. On the other hand, what can Americans do, and especially New Yorkers, to support a movement for Palestinian and Israeli liberation on the ground? And wrapped within that, there's a question, because I didn't make you give me all the questions just so we could sugarcoat everything. On the one hand, how do you see expanding the message here to Palestinian and Arab audiences that have been less drawn to this message than, for example, American Jews? And maybe other audiences of people who are neither Jewish nor Palestinian nor Arab. And also, very sweetly, do you envision a future where you'll be able to work with BDS?
Wow, so many questions packed into
Sorry.
one. No, that's
Just
good. That's good. Let me
edit them out.
All right, let's start. What can you do? I guess, as an American audience, I think, but also as a Jewish audience, and not all of you, I'm not assuming that you're all Jewish, but I'm guessing some are. Some. I think one of the biggest things that, we need to realize here that, that what is happening in Israel-Palestine is being funded by your taxes. This is not even, a Jewish-American problem. This is an American citizens problem. And I think that's one of the things that I would start by saying. This movement, and when I said it at the beginning, this is a shared movement. This is about your lives. This is about you. This is about your welfare and your social justice and your equality and your health care. And, you are literally paying for that, and it is immoral, and it is horrible, and it's against all of our humanity, but it's also affecting you. And I think that's something that needs to be said, and we need to mobilize around that, around your interest. Not just out of a moral stance, but also not wanting to do this in your name and with your tax dollar. So I would start by saying, organize around sanctions, around arms embargo. Absolutely, go for it. America, the United States, is claiming to be a friend of Israel. Right? I mean, they are best friends. Israel right now is a drunk lunatic. And the US is just handing it shots. And I think you should organize around that, and you should not be apologetic about that. And if anyone tells you, especially the ones here who fear to say that, because you do hold the security and the safety of the Jewish people in Israel in your heart and in your minds. So the most important thing that you can tell them is that holding out those shots are actually the most important thing you can do for Jewish safety in Israel. And yeah, and talking about the Palestinian movement, I don't think the Palestinian movement is not on board with what we are saying. I honestly don't think anyone would, and honestly, I'm more than happy to engage in a conversation with anyone who disagrees inherently with what we are saying. Or what we envision and what we stand for, of freedom, of dignity, of equality from the river to the sea. I don't think anyone can really disagree with that. I think there are minor disagreements on tactics, on terminology, on audiences, and that should be okay. And it seems like it's not okay. It should be okay. We don't have the luxury of not making it okay. We don't have the luxury of making our ability to join the struggle, to join the movement so hard. We don't have the luxury for that. And I think that's my message for any pro-Palestinian a movement who thinks that it's hard for them to work with us. We don't have that luxury. That's on a more, strategic level. On a personal level, that's heartbreaking for me as a Palestinian. Talking BDS, obviously I mentioned sanctions. I mentioned, we really do believe in, boycott, divestment, and sanctions as nonviolent resistance against oppression and violence is extremely valid and extremely important and strategic. Do we think that it is not only strategic, it's a moral stance that someone needs to take, and not only in Israel-Palestine, by the way. There are a lot of injustices happening around the world that we need to take a stance against. Do we believe that, yes, thank you. Do we believe that, I'm talking to you, I guess, some of you might know that we are actually enlisted as a movement to be boycotted by BDS, and it's up to them. We're open. As I said, we are partners. We want to partner with as many people as possible. We want to expand the movement, and for us, we are relating to anyone that wants to share our vision, to share our mission and our values. And I think as long as you agree on, one basic thing, which I think can be the main contention, which is the fact that the Israeli society has people, and they have interests, and it's very surreal for me to say that and stand and do that on behalf of the Israeli society as a Palestinian. It's very surreal for me. Don't think this is easy for me to do. But you need to understand not only that it's a moral human stance to see the Israeli people as people, that and the Israeli society, 2 million Palestinians and 9 million Jews, right? 9? Yeah, 8, 9, as people with interests and with an interest to actually live freely and independently. But you also need to understand that we're not going anywhere. No one's going anywhere. And I think once we agree on that, we're welcome. Come and work with us.
I want to jump in here on what we can do, and certainly, as Sally said, one thing you could do is call your Congress member and encourage them to sign on to the Block the Bombs Act, because we don't need to be sending offensive weapons to keep bombing Gaza, and more on that later. But I want to talk about what we could be doing in New York City right now, because what an extraordinary moment we have to show that Jews and Muslims, Jews and Arabs will not be divided from each other. There are we got 1 million Muslims here. We got 1.4 million Jews right here in New York City. And what people are looking at us to see what we will do. And people have strong feelings. My goodness, you can see it. And just as Sally said, you know, it's not excusing to try to understand how people are feeling. I got a lot of frustrations at how people have reacted to this election, and I'm, you know, in my feelings about it. I can see other people in their feelings about it. Let's have the courage to go have conversations and insist on building those bridges. So, like, I want to shout out Congregation Beth Elohim that invited the mayoral candidates into the synagogue for dialogue that was not always easy. So I hope more synagogues will reach out to Mayor-elect Mamdani and invite him into their synagogues. And he knows you're going to ask hard questions. That's just fine. But let's also make sure more of us Jewish elected officials are getting into mosques as well. We don't need to follow Andrew Cuomo's model. And we could be asked hard questions as well. You know, Zoran will get asked all the time about, what will he say about people saying globalize the Intifada. I almost never get asked, you know, like, what are you doing to stop a genocide? And it's not like kind of what are the words people are willing to say. It's what kinds of relationships are we willing to be in with each other. And we are called at this moment to try harder with people on our own side that we disagree with, to have our arguments and argue with them, but also not to allow, and this is what I really love here, we have allowed the line drawing to keep us from being able to be in relationship with each other. And we have to use the opportunity of this election to push past that and insist on people's shared humanity right here in New York City. And I mean, the one other way we have an opportunity to get that right is that Donald Trump is about to send the National Guard and troops into our city in efforts to deport our neighbors, including people just for exercising freedom of speech on Palestinian rights. What would it look like if Jews and Muslims refused to be divided from each other and we all showed up together as New Yorkers in the months ahead? I promise to do my own fundraising pitch as well. Some of you may have seen that on election night, you know, I had a shirt hidden under my button-down shirt, which had a more aggressive message to a certain former mayoral candidate whose name we're not speaking. But I got into that kind of Superman-style thing, and
It's really happening. Okay. It's purple. What does it say? There we go.
You can have these shirts if you buy them in the back. They're the Friends of Standing Together New York shirts. And I'm actually going to do my little bit that I think Rabbi Amichai Lau-Levi is gone now, but he taught this on a little Torah when his film was launched, about why this shirt is not only helping power this incredible grassroots movement, but how it has redemptive powers as well. So one challenge in all of this, I think, if you're Jewish, is you grow up with this idea of Am Segula, that there's something chosen, special, unique about us. And that can be, you know, wonderful sometimes, but can take you in a supremacist direction others. But he taught the root of segula is segol, the Hebrew word for purple. And so maybe if we think of this as not the chosen people, but the purple people. And of course, purple is sort of a mixing of things. Maybe you think of it as like blue sky and red earth, or maybe you think of it as, you know, red and blue in other ways. And maybe what's special or unique about us could be if we're, redeemed in this way, that experience of diaspora and wandering and separation taught us something special about how we find a way back together. And Am Sagol is what you guys are showing us how to be. So buy your shirt, contribute to standing together. I was going to ask you guys, what gives you hope? And I'm happy to ask it that way, but I'm going to kind of spice it up like this. A couple weeks ago, Ayman Odeh was here in New York City. And some of you know Ayman Odeh is a departing but member of Knesset, and is a Palestinian citizen of Israel, was for a time the leader of the Arab Joint List, extraordinary politician, just real extraordinary visionary for the possibility of shared society. For that, he was impeached, and they tried to vote him out of Knesset. He survived the vote. Anyway, he was here in New York City. And I said to him, Ayman, someday there is going to be the first Jewish member of the Palestinian parliament. Someday, I think they'll be like the kid or the grandkid of settlers. There'll be a Palestinian parliament, and it'll have Jewish minority members, just like the Knesset has Ayman Odeh, and just like, Sally's in Haifa. Well, you're probably in the majority in the Haifa City Council. You could answer just what gives you hope. And I think that Jewish member of the Palestinian parliament is going to look to Ayman as their spiritual, godfather in building shared society. So you can either answer what gives you hope, or you can send a message to that first Jewish member of the Parliament of Palestine and what you're hoping you're handing off to them.
Wow. Wow for everything, and thank you. I guess that I will try to combine the two options together. After these 2 years where, after dealing with videos and pictures that will never get out of our heads of dead babies and children, after spending so many nights with the families of the hostages in the hostage square or demonstration, getting beaten by the police, after being arrested, and I spent a week in jail, after getting death threats, after experiencing all the forces in our societies pushing us to the opposite direction as a Palestinian, as a Jewish person, after all these terrible, terrible, terrible rivers of blood on our land, I think that there is literally a mini miracle that Sally and I are sitting here tonight together, that the movement is able and was able and will be able to sit in the room together, to cry together, to feel the trauma together, to be analyzing the reality together, to ask the tough questions together, to be able to get out of the room together and do the actions and the struggles and the activities. This is a mini miracle and gives me a lot of hope. Not because I'm certain that our struggle is going to win next week or next month or next year, or maybe not even in the next decade. I don't have the certainty. But I do know that this space, this home base that we created, is the essence of this sentence that you have on your shirt, where there is struggle, there is hope, and we exist, and we still are together, and we still are in this struggle, and that gives me a lot of hope, and I am sure that the future generations, which I hope will be born into a reality where it's granted for them, it is obvious to them that they are free, that they are safe, that they don't need to run to a shelter in the middle of the night, that they don't need to be begging for food or separating from a mom that was killed in a bombing. These generations will sit on shoulders of the many amazing good people of Israel and Palestine that are fighting now, and our message to them will be, don't fuck it up.
Can you say this word in a church? I think he just remembered he's in a church. Yeah. I think for me, when I imagine, hope is not this like, optimistic, light, amazing, joyous, pure, feeling. It's actually a feeling that can be very heavy, right? What is hope? Hope is our collective, our belief in our collective ability to change our reality. That is hope, ultimately. And that belief really comes with so many realizations of the challenges, of the pain, of what can be. And for me, what gives me hope is that historically, people change. Political stances fluctuate overnight, really overnight. If you give them an exciting alternative that guarantees them what they need, they will choose it. They will choose it. And what gives me hope is the resilience of my people, of the Palestinian people. And that's the heaviest kind of hope, the resilience of the Palestinian people. But I do believe that people want to be normal. And, I'm looking at the Israeli society as my part of the mission. And people want to be normal. People don't want to do this. People don't want to, turn 18, for their kids to turn 18 and go and kill and be killed and be oppressors and be in checkpoints and be... People want to be normal and they want safety, and that gives me hope.
First of all, I have to thank these three really amazing human beings. Sally and Alonli, thank you for coming all the way here to speak to us and leaving your very urgent work on the ground.